Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Daily Trading Recap. That was a cool introduction. It's Wednesday, the 22nd of December, 2021. SPY again, very nice day. We're looking at perfect 1% day in the green. I'm showing here a very sharp V bounce off of when we were trying to test all-time highs once again, then finding these little relative lows here around 450 area and right back close to that 470 mark again today too. We'll see where we end up going from here. And again, I'll mention off of pretty low volume compared to the days when it was trying to sell off there and putting in 100 million plus share volume on the day. Interesting to see that relative little information there, but I'm no market analyst that way. Dollar volume on the day, just for reference for me, NASDAQ $156 billion volume as of 45 minutes after the close here. Very low. Nice to see $192 billion volume. Wow, that's crazy to see that sub 200 billion. And OTC's $1.9 billion volume. Expecting to potentially see, of course, we were kind of expecting to see lower volume today, and then we'll probably expect the same thing going forward tomorrow as well too, since it is Christmas Eve day tomorrow, and everybody and their grandmas already on their yachts in the Bahamas and the Caribbean's heading out for a nice little Christmas holiday there. But we will still see there's plenty of opportunities still today and even the rest of this week, which is surprising me. I'm trying to recollect on the last December if I remember that same thing, but who knows? It's whatever. Let's actually more journal notes that I had here in going in for to me on the day. Just continuing to not focus still on the price fills or the specific percentage moves that I'm doing with these paper trading moves. And I feel that I wrote here that I think that allows me a lot more to open myself up to the perspective of covering or selling if I'm long on, if it's still below that 10% mark, because I was just such in that groove of where I would only define a trade as if it went 10% profit target. And I would handcuff myself a lot of times that way of trying to force a lot more out of trades than were really there a lot of the times, and just turning potential winners into losers. And I think that actually took a lot of my win rate away as well, because it was just sometimes all or nothing. And the market really wasn't saying that 10% was there all the time too. I'm talking like summer months of this year of 2021, and even still bleeding more into the last few months here as well, that I still, for some reason, that just got fixed in my head that, oh, it's got to be 10%. If you're not trading a 10% profit, then it's not a trade. It's just not even worthwhile. Versus now on these ones, if it is, it's more about the setup and the pattern to say, if the pattern is recognizable and there is an optimal entry window to justify a risk reward level or an opportunity of potential area of inflection, that is more of the key factor in then potentially saying, could I get 10% out of this trade here? Which I think I just fell into that trap a little bit from when I started of that hot 2020 market of just everything was moving. If it was a stock, it was moving. So it was just about like a minimum target of, I know that everything is moving, but can I get 10% out of this? And that was the first barrier to entry for me to get the trade, versus now where it's become, and I have to shift my paradigm on that, is this a pattern that I can recognize and find a key level in that identifying the opposite side of it would produce the effect that I want to see. Putting in the viewpoint of the opposite side, I can see the faults in their logic and their rationale, and then play the opposite side of that for that trade that way. So that's kind of just a shifting that I'm having to do with my mentality now, that I think still in this paper trading mindset that I am short. I'm still in this paper trading set with everything I'm doing still, and just for the long side, just very, very small position sizes for those trades, just to continue to, again, I've mentioned it pretty much every day, but eroding away or just taking away for the meantime all of the huge amount of factors that come into these trading things, with whether it's position sizing, overall risk management, account size, or just need to create a profit, or just, I got to create, what's my win rate on this month, or what's it doing this way? For me right now, I'm just really back to the first basic step of, am I in the right charts, or am I looking at the correct thing? So I'll see on the charts today too, especially, I'm taking some bigger risks, not necessarily bigger risk levels, but I'm just like sizing up more, and I'm putting more conviction on the trades that I think are there, because I think this trade is there. And if it's not there, then I'll just cut it and move on to the next one. Alrighty. So then also off of that in my journal, I wrote in there today I had this idea of, for how visual my brain is, I want to start keeping a chart little database system of, make it a rotating the past 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks maybe, of charts that fit the particular mold of, what it is for that section of the day, or what that pattern is for the day, and using that as a kind of playbook and guide for trading these charts in these days, because that's how my whole mentality on these traders works. Is I know the playbook, and I know the dip and rip style of trade. I know the panic dip buy style trade. I know all of those different factors, but it's the market sentiment are those charts working out consistently in this time frame? And if they are, then great, continue to hit them hard and just play them that way. But I think it's just especially just going out. So like, for example, I'm looking at like first screen days, having a chart of all these first screen day movers, and then looking at all those in these past 3 weeks to say, okay, how are we moving in these past 3 weeks? What are the different floats, the different volumes that we were seeing on these days? And then how, of course, did they react in market hours that way too? Is there an overall bearish sentiment on these ones in the afternoon session, in the morning session? Is there just a quick little spiky session after maybe 10, 15 minutes here? Is there a recognizable pattern that way? So I think just collecting those more is going to allow me, especially in my preparation for the day to just allow myself and open my eyes up more to recognize the plays, like I mentioned on ACST here, how it was kind of similar to SPRB as well. So making a collection, I'm just like eyeballing of, okay, first screen day, second day plays, third day plays. Are we seeing like an after hours mover spikes like BRTX did today? Maybe what happens after offerings like PTPI, maybe something like it's a multi-day breakout style play like GRTX today, a little bit of keeping charts like that in that specific category and being able to look through those and refine them to say, okay, now I've got this stock today. Let's go pull up this chart because it fits this criteria and see if there's any movers back there that have the same type of volume, type of price action, if they're kind of similar at all, and see if we can get any indication on what could potentially happen today because of that market sentiment on what happened on that one, maybe within this past week, past 2 weeks, whatever that time frame is, but recent enough that it has some amount of weight to say, hey, this is recent enough that it could perform in a similar fashion to this one today. For traders for me on the day, 4 triggers that I was in. One kind of just so-so trade, maybe a little break even, maybe a little winner, but that was BVXV. And then 1 winner on RELI, and then 2 column losers on SOPA, and then ACST that I was in as well. But let's get into the charts that way. Starting off with SOPA, big mover on the day. We're looking at a $1.5 billion volume on the day. Awesome, crazy to see. Third day play on this bad boy today. Again, 11 million floater, Asian e-commerce business. The valuation for me in pre-market coming in was, okay, we're on the third day play. The overall sentiment, and this is why I just mentioned in the introduction there too, of why I want to keep the chart database for these movers, because I know for certain that I've played the short side on these third day plays numerous times, and I can mention like BLU and the other ones, but to have those specific charts and dates to bring up is what I'm after. So I need to start doing that way. But I feel the overall sentiment for that type of chart is, okay, third day plays just normally they would be surging and producing some nice opportunity there in squeezy territory, but the just sentiment has not been there for these to do that as of late. So still looking at this one as of a short perspective that way, because we're still also kind of grinding closer to the lows of what the volume profile is saying. It's just right around coming into market hours today, just still that the overhead was peaking around $12, and then we just see a huge drop off right around underneath this $10 level area. So coming in with that short thesis, I prepped in my mind to say, okay, I could take a more probable trade as it is cracking below $10, below this 9. Of course, these few technical level areas that it could start to hit through 9.6-ish area. But ultimately 9.5 would have been a key area for me if I was going to stay out and wait for a full confirmation of a short bias on this one for me to get a trade in. To say I could use that point as a go, no go, looking for more potential downside from there to know that the downside is actually in. But then starting in pre, it's still just kind of hovering through there, and then it's just looking weaker. I'm saying, okay, I'm educational, I'm all experiential in all of this. Let's go ahead and get short. And all of these scores today too, because I was fully short. These were all mental because I can't short pre-market through TradingView for that paper trading platform, which is stupid, but it's the best we got. It's whatever. But again, going through that process of just kind of calling out in order to go through the motions of pushing a button where I would be reenacting an actual trade. I actually like verbally call out, okay, I'm short here at 10-2, and just wake up everybody in the house. But I have to put myself in, I just can't be wishy-washy that, oh, okay, I'm short here, and then it starts to go against me, and then I'm like, oh, okay, well, I actually wasn't short there. It's just some amount of holding me accountable that way. But anyway, starting to short a little bit there, that 10-2 area. It starts to pull up nicely into market open. We do get a sell-off here right away in the gate, but bounces. Finds a little, what I was looking at as a VWAP rejection, or that little bounce volatility attempt, and got short into that pull as well. And then found a little higher low and started to push even higher to VWAP. And as it was just continuing to cling around there, I just thought it was looking a little bit too good with strength. So say, hey, cut it. This is a different trade than what, or it's looking a little bit too sketchy for me at this point. So I'll cut it, move on to the next one. But it still didn't break that high of that volume candle. I'm just continued to hover around there. So got in again, got a very nice fill around 10-3 on the paper side there. Then started looking at these wicky red candles, but still downtrending, putting in some nice moves there, but finds a base, finds a bottom around 9.8, and just starts to spike immediately with huge volume. And I was able to get out pretty much unscathed before a huge volume surge and huge move into a halt there. And that was kind of, it just trended a little bit that way and met a little bit of the resistance that I mentioned in that volume profile around that peak 12 area that came from these past 2 trading days. And not a coincidence in my mind, again, that it just, after that halt, it just continues to ride to that point, and then starts to fade back closer to VWAP a little bit, gets a little bit more consolidation, a little rest before it ultimately has a nice squeeze, move to an amazing 18.6 high day that way. And something that I didn't really know, as Huddy mentioned in the chat, this is with a perfect Gritani reversal pattern off of lows, which is something I was not really aware of or was accustomed to from seeing from him. But obviously, yeah, I can totally see that point on a multi-day mover for, okay, it's bouncing off of lows. Shorts like me, my exact trade thesis, or potentially even from yesterday as well too, shorting anywhere around here, are starting to get stuck. And especially looking at that volume profile itself, as it's starting to pile up closer and closer to that and then break to the upside of that move, you can get even hairy from there. Additionally, at that point, I think that's just what allowed for this thing to squeeze so crazily, and the low floaterness and just the craziness that is this holiday little trading week that way. So again, interesting. And oh my gosh, Jack number 2, Jack Schwartz, of his mention of obvious levels of manipulation, because yesterday's closing day was 10.63. So 90% of that, in order to get this thing short sale restricted going into tomorrow, the next day, would have to put price below 9.56 today. Did I just screw that over? Or 9.56, yeah. So that would be 90% of the 10.63, what it ever closed at that previous day, in order to get this thing short sale restricted today. And what does it get to a low of a bottom tick? Or get 9.567 is 10% from that, whatever number I just said. And the low here is 9.56. By 0.007 cents, they were able to perfectly bottom tick this thing out to get it short sale restricted, to get it to that 10% drop off mark from the previous 30 days close, in order to enact that little halt measure, circuit breaker measure there, and then just ride this thing up higher the rest of the day that way. So that was crazy, kind of cool to see how he was able to spot that and see that point there. Of how perfectly that was able to be manipulated that way. And I can imagine what was just going on behind the scenes the whole time on this bad boy. But great charts to learn from. And this is why we need to have them not only just in a database of this little short-term database that is in my mind's eye of what these things are doing recently in the markets, but also just getting that experience over and over again for the knowledge P&L bank, continuing to go forward in my trading career in order to add to these more and more and recognize that pattern and build this Gritani reversal pattern off lows into the playbook as well too. That's a great opportunity there that rides very nicely into the afternoon session for a trader on SOPA. So grading myself for me on the short thesis today, I give it, for the idea, a C grade, because I knew it was speculative. I knew the trade really wasn't confirmed at this point, but just identifying areas of, okay, after we get a hard crack here, okay, let's go ahead and start in short. And sure enough, that did produce a nice little price action that did get me 10.2 to 9.5 area. Not crazy bad of a percentage move that way, but certainly not what I was going to look for or settle for on that trade. Like I mentioned in the introduction, of I'm forcing 10% on all these, but I thought there could have been a little bit more meat on the bone for the downside on this one if that trade was actually going to confirm itself that way. But yeah, for the idea, I give myself a grade of a C, and execution wise for the trade that I was going after, a B grade. I wasn't perfect. I could have nailed the tops a little bit better here. Could have held maybe a little bit longer and not have been so chickened out at this little high here and saved myself this extra trade here before I would have obviously gotten stopped out, showing that huge strength into this halt here at that point. So not perfect. I'm going to give myself a B on the execution side for that, but learning lessons all the way around on that one. ACST I'll mention next. Man, this was the one. Came into this one today after doing all the scans and coming after this one. This one was on the watch list from yesterday after it popped up as a beautiful after hours move. This would be the one that would go into that after hours news catalyst spike from the previous trading day, after the close of the previous trading day, that just turns into a pre-market looking weak and dull, continuing the same downtrend that goes into market hours, where market hours does the exact same slope of a line, or just even steeper of a line to the downside. That becomes a nice little fade sit as a short. And I was so in the mindset of this is A+. If I was actually trading real position size, I would be hammering full account size, full position size on this trade. We got American Biotech, 30 million floater. The news catalyst was just a stupid price target raise by Oppenheimer from yesterday. They're raising it to $6. Whoopee, good for you. The daily is downtrending. Love to see these longs are all bleeding if they're backholding this thing. So any volume perk or any price perk, they're just like, oh, it's finally my opportunity to at least get out with a little grace at this point. And then it just kind of turns into a slow bleeding death that they're hopefully waiting. Oh, well, maybe we get it a little bit more. Maybe we get like a $2 push and I can get out a little bit there. But then it just continues to bleed and bleed away. And they're realizing their hope of selling at any price percentage move up is continuing to fleet away. And then it just becomes a panicking sell that way. So what the trade thesis did not really, coming into the chart today, did not really account for this little perk above VWAP. So for me, in my mind's eye of the trading thesis, was not expecting to see, should not have produced any amount of perking above VWAP. Maybe we get a little fake out candle there. I can live with that. That's the market. It's just meant there to wick you out on all these things. So I was able to sit through that, push to 145, starting and getting short mentally on the paper side. It's like even less paper than paper. It's just mental trade on all of these shorts, but holding myself accountable to these little paper short entries that I was getting into, seeing it scaling up here with volume, which again went against what the trade thesis was initially. I wanted to see this thing dying here at 135 and then start to press the lows to 1.3 and then just continue to drop off and look at 1.2 as a potential first profit-taking target area on this short. But then it did end up pulling back after that little 145 push. There was a huge bidder around 143 that did end up dumping hard on this candle after that. We broke through that level for some reason that way. So getting short around this little push here, finding it fall nicely into market open, which I'm sitting nicely there with my short, and then just seeing it bounce off of that after the morning bell. Seeing it again, kind of topping here at 145, gets a little wicky at 146, and just the whole time my confidence is like, you are not going to beat me. You are meant for death. This is not going to wick me out. This is not going to be, again, one of those stupid charts where I just have a nice short thesis and then, I get top tick covered here before it ends up falling exactly where I want it to go and even further beyond. That would have been a nice, incredible trade opportunity. It was just not going to happen for me in the day. So I ended up going like double, quadruple down paper on even through that wiki candle, that top wiki candle that would have been an obvious risk level for me above that 145 level. It was not going to happen today. I was balancing that line of just being, what's the word for it? Cocky, but not reluctant to give up the trade versus still kind of rational to understand, okay, I can't continue to hold this thing short forever, but I just know it confidently in my bones that this thing is just meant to die. So as we see after that point, 144 starts to pull off, and I'm thinking, sweet, yeah, now we're breaking to the downside of VWAP. Low a day, here we come, 1.2, here we come. Here's just how it's going to happen. I just had to sit through a little bit of stupid volatility that way. And I'm willing to take it. You can do what you want to do. I don't like it. But I'm going to be accustomed. I'm going to have to live with it. But then, of course, we did get a reversal that gets us back above VWAP. Just kind of wicky and choppy. And this thing's just like, I'm banging my head against the wall. Like, you are meant to die. And I thought we're seeing little tops here around this top little wicky volume exhaustion candle. And then it's starting to roll over a little bit. But sure enough, gets this reversal. And you can see here, along with a lot of other shorts, they were thinking the same thing. And this was their point of, okay, you've been stupid long enough. You go do whatever you want to do. And it has a few more cents after that and then just kind of piddles around. But that is the market, the little snake that it's just wanting to get those orders. And for some reason, there was a lot more shorts bagged on this one that had their stops at that obvious risk level of just enough of like just close to that 1.5 area, 1.48 area that, oh, if we can get you to there, we're going to get you stopped out, but we're not going to go any further than that. Sure enough, that was the move there. Because, looking at this one, if I was still holding a short thesis and still holding like super, super rigid on, I know this thing's meant for death, I'm not going to be covering into any panicking shorts or any, volume pushes to the upside. I'm only going to be covering into actual price breaks of that move. That's a hard fallacy to go upon, but even at that, where is a better covering area? Is like looking around here as we get later past 11:15 time frame, is that a more suitable cover point to say? Because eventually I got to cover. Like, I don't want to be taking more than what I was looking at of kind of close to my relative entry price around there, 5, 6, 7 cents of slip or loss from there per share. But then it's like, okay, well, we did get a spike to get 150, and then it pulls back off of there, comes back down to 145. Is that a good point to cover? Or is it like, because you can't be expecting to see or expecting to cover around 135 here when I'm finally back in the profit after that move there. And I could have totally played this as a bag holder and said, okay, well, I'm not in the profit, and I'm not going to sell, I'm not going to cover into just these volume little panicky moves here because I know there's no strength to them. That's just that volatility accumulation. It's just meant to get me out. I'm not going to play that game anymore. Whereas it's like, okay, what is the probability then of this thing actually coming back into the profit target for me being in the black on this trade? That is just a speculative trade in itself. And that's a totally different game than what I'm trying to play, especially with this paper trading route and just picking, being in the right trades and what I'm trying to do of picking tops or just predicting the future on what these charts could be that way. That goes against a lot of what I'm trying to do that way. And I think that was the trap I tried to fall into a little bit because of again, you're seeing everybody else and their grandma making money on Twitter and just like, oh, who could ever have a red day in this market? It's just the greatest job in the world, right? And you're just like, what? How are you holding on to that type of risk? And you're looking at their trades and what they're showing. It's just like stupid. Pretty all over the place with that one, man. This just looking like an A+ snack in pre-market that I was just ready to just punch in the face and say, yeah, let's go. But it just didn't happen. Pretty great reminder to see that you can never let yourself get too confident or so overly confident in these trades that you don't recognize reality or price slapping you in the face when it does there. So this one what I failed to recognize was this one ended up turning into SPRB from, what day was this one when it had that first green day from, this was last week Thursday. That had the news catalyst in the after hours of Thursday into that Friday. Let's get rid of this. Exact same type of pattern of the spike. It just kind of does whatever, blah, into the close of the actual market and after hours. Pre-market opens a little bit weaker, just no volume, continuing to bleed a little bit more, just looking deathly. As it gets above VWAP, it rejects, opens weak into market open. Has a little bit of just, this was what I was not expecting on SPRB, just what I was planning for of looking for continual death. I'll actually show what I was looking for today, which was BRTX, like I mentioned a little bit in the introduction. Same type of pattern. I didn't trade this one, or I didn't have it. I took ACST over BRTX because of this little push here at the open of pre. I just wasn't, or was it at the close? Yeah, in this open of pre. It was just like, okay, well, that doesn't really fit my mold, doesn't really fit my pattern. I don't like to see that. But again, how much weight do I give to the opening of pre-market when who's awake? The computer? That's the computer chairs. Like, how much weight should I actually put on that little chart pattern there when it was showing me the same exact thing that I'm looking for? VWAP rejections, continual bleeding death here, no volume pushes here. When it is a volume push, it's to the downside. It's just rejecting that higher push for a higher price. That one sure did end up putting in a nice price action short ride along to be on the short side of that trade. That's exactly what I was looking for. An easy, nothing is ever easy, just simple scaling in different points here when pre-establish what your position, whatever it is. But even then, at this point, if I'm willing to wait for market hours to get that first position, starting to scale in at these little volume exhaustion points as it's continuing to just push higher without any quest above that VWAP, using that as a line of demarcation to say if we start to break good above there with volume, I'm not going to get out because of that, but I would look to start a position there. You get the long kiss, the first kiss goodnight, that becomes the long kiss goodnight at that point, right at the 9:45 time frame. That just sets up for a nice little beautiful short side trade there. So yeah, like I mentioned on SPRB, on that day, that's what this chart today, not to the same extent, but that's what it ended up doing. Of just it's rejecting, breaking down continually, triple bottoming here, continuing to build closer and closer to VWAP, squeeze out the shorts that are still lingering around here, and then pushing higher to new price action. That's what we did on a little bit of a shorter time frame, because we did it just right in the afternoon, before the afternoon session, then sold off a little bit more. Golly, like, again, that's another attribute for why I want to keep this little chart of these types of movers, just to see what the sentiment on these is for me, and give me that quick refresh in the preparation in pre-market to say what the potential of these could be since this little recent time frame. So grade for this trade, grade for the trade idea on this one today, F. It did the exact opposite of what I thought it was going to do. Even as I was establishing the position, it was doing the opposite of what I thought it was going to do. F. I have to give it. There's no other grade to give it other than that. For execution of what I was trading on this chart itself, I can give myself a B of respecting, of not getting faked out in this first little 145 break to the upside, which normally I could have seen myself definitely getting spooked out by that. And then, of course, having to sit through, now it's perfectly falling back below 135 here and sitting through that little move. But even that there, I'm still getting a little bit faked out in the same type of thing of these huge volume pushes where a lot of other shorts are doing the same thing. And that's what I don't want to be a part of, is being with the crowd that's incorrect, being with that dumb money. I want to avoid that, and I want to be looking for those nickels that are just freely floating and sitting around, and continue to collect them up bit by bit and have those little gains that add up to eventually major winners that way. So those are the grades I give myself on that one. BVXV, I'll go over now. Man, I always manage to create some incredibly long videos. First green day mover today, it was the biggest dollar volume mover in pre. It was up 100% by 9 a.m. and trading $45 million volume today. Pretty insane. Closing the day at $440 million volume, and I can probably attest that too, just how flat it was on the day. That's the reason why I didn't accrue a lot more dollar volume than just that $440 million, because $440 million volume is nothing, just nothing. But as we're getting pretty scaly here, are just more fundamentals for me. 14 million floater company, American Biopharma. They've got like $150 million shelf capacity from August, but I did not see any usage of that recently. Of course, it could definitely have a lot. I put a lot of work into that, but again, downtrending daily. I would love to see little spiky bits here. As a short, there was a huge, no, that's the other one. And then on the volume profile wise, we could have, I was identifying a huge amount of little resistance potential, volume profile resistance right around this $3 to $3.20-ish range that we were getting from these previous days here, the 7/27, what is that, July? Yeah, July 27th, July 28th from this little perky day at that point. So, and then as we're grinding into that from this pre-market today, I'm saying, okay, we're kind of looking pretty toppy here. Famous last words that it's up too much. It can't keep going. It can't go anymore. Famous last words with that. But that was the thesis for this little paper short. Again, that normally I would not take a trade like this. And this is really not one in the playbook. It's not showing any true signs of, hey, the sentiment for this chart today is death or bleeding. But it was just a picking top type of trade. And of course, respecting that high of day as the same thing that it's all mental. What is my risk? It's just education. So getting in after this little toppy red wiki candle here, rejection, or just under that $3 markish. It tries to double top there, or tries to break to new high, double tops, ends up pulling back a little bit more. Looking for 2.7, obviously as a first fill, 10% mark from there, but wasn't able to fully get it in this candle. So forcing to cover around 2.75-ish, a little above that mark. Again, mentally and all that, and just how I was holding myself accountable that way. And then would have been like half of my position I was covering there, just as a I really didn't want to be in this one during market hours because I knew just how crazy and stupid these big volume movers can be, big dollar volume movers, and just not really wanting to play this game. I knew there was going to be just so hectic both ways on both sides. And I just didn't want to be a part of it. But it was like in these first 2-3 minutes, it was just like, okay, well, if we get a quick little wick here, I was putting a mental order in just at like 2.7 or 2.65-ish. Okay, if we get filled, if we drop down 2.65-ish, okay, then I'll be out, and then I can move on to the next one, do whatever it wants to do. Maybe it comes back up. Perkson has a little nice volume push, but then it did end up. Obviously, I put in a mental risk level at that $3 level area again, as a point to say this one could just go crazy squeezy mode, and I want to be protecting myself that way. Chris actually had a nice little long opportunity trader on there. I think he was in somewhere around here selling into this push, getting wicked out that way, but really not even wicked out because I was wicking out on the opposite side of the trade, thinking, okay, we could go crazy against me here, and then sure enough, it does just end up rejecting that one, but not dying off, not breaking a new low day during market hours, and starting to build off of that, and then press into a nice move that ends up tapping just below 3.5 there for that move that way. Yeah, just learning lessons, not a playbook style of trade, but just kind of recognizing, okay, hey, we're on the daily chart, we're running into a little bit of volume here. It is up quite a lot already, over 100% here on pretty decent dollar volume. The time frame is semi-right, and the type of price action, in my mind, I could see us retracing a little bit closer to VWAP, just because of, the probability isn't certain. It's not I don't find comfort in the certainty that's there. You could see this thing still continuing to rise. Maybe we opened closer to 3.4 for how this thing wanted to move potentially. But just respecting risk levels that are there. And again, all of it was educational and experimental that way. I'm just continuing to put myself in that action more on the level 2 time and sales, be in the thick of it. Whereas normally if I was actually trading with my PDT account, with my cash account, I would keep this chart up. It's one of the biggest movers in pre-market, but wouldn't have gotten to be able to experience to trade it because I just it's not a perfect playbook pattern. Why would I waste a day trade on that? Because day trades are so valuable. They're just the holy grail, versus today where I can be in this trade and experience that without really having to take on any actual dollar monetary risk that way. So kind of getting the best of both worlds for right now, for where my situation is at the moment. Takeaway that I could use from this one could be, because I did have half of the position left and I was using this $3 level as a risk mark, and knowing that this thing could squeeze crazily, I knew that I always have to be aware of that fake outs are not only evident and apparent, but probable. And that's certainly what happened on this one, that obviously getting into, as it's pressing here on these secondary and tertiary candles, that, okay, yeah, you got to start covering here at this point. But had this fake out continue to press new lows, test VWAP here and push a little bit lower, man, you would have just felt like an idiot for that short covering right at the top, getting faked out again. So maybe a takeaway from this one that I could use as another little bit of an educational lesson would be, because I had a smaller position size left, I could have been willing to increase that risk a little bit to allow for some potential slippage. But again, famous last words of this thing could have been at 3.3, 3.4, 3.5 before I could even blink for these just crazy low floaters and these first grain day movers, big dollar volume movers, how fast they can move against you. But, even maybe potentially sizing down a little bit more into market open to say, okay, it's not broken my risk level yet, but I really don't want to be in the trade yet at this point. But I can size down just enough to say, okay, I'll give it this much slippage here. I'm defining this risk level, this risk area here. If it's going very fast in that direction, I'll give it a little bit of fake out room, maybe a little bit of a leash that way, but allowing for factoring that type of risk analysis and position sizing into the trade that way too. Maybe something that I evaluate going forward in the future as well. So C grades for me on the idea. C, kind of maybe like break even, or just scratching out a little bit of profit on that one. Just kind of average, and execution wise, again, the same thing. C of average of could have held a little bit more, maybe could have had a few orders in here closer, as it was just holding up a little bit too well and got a better fill around 2.8 at that point. But yeah, still much to learn from this trader on the day, BVXV. Now going into the last one, RELI, second day play today. surprising to see how far it actually did go down. And I think Jack number 2, Jack Schwartz, said the same thing, that even though Ken F did the same thing yesterday on that second day play, I think this one was a little bit different because of some medical news that was involved in that one. But on RELI, exact same thing. I did not expect it to drop that hard, but the sentiment was still there that shorting into any pops, risking VWAP, looking for potential strength to be shorting into as just a rest day, no volume accumulation day, and just betting on it's just going to be lackluster volume day. And it certainly was on the volume scale today on the daily shown there. And covering, starting in pre again, kind of just blanketing of, I was strong enough to not get short this one in this little pull here as it was starting to break lows, where I would normally say, okay, we're breaking into new lows here. I want to be short this one, and not so much FOMO, but it's just like, okay, the trade confirmation has been in this one, and the preparation has been in for so long, and now it's starting to do that. Okay, am I missing my opportunity, or like, do I have time to still get in? But resisted that temptation, let it allow it to build up a little bit more, and got around 4.9-ish mentally as a mark there, just under. Start getting short, still bleeding into market open. Has a little test here, just these little wiki candles that try to produce some amount of volume, but it's not showing with strength, which is a good sign for the continual downside confirmation of this trade idea for me. And then we get that nice little basing, push to view up there, rejection, starting with another short again, kind of around the same area, around that 4.9-ish mark, and then continues, it starts that die off. Nice, easy cover. So I start the cover around 4.6-ish, and I thought I kind of lucked out as it pulled all the way to 4.5 for my last half position size. For my last half of my position size cover there around 4.5, because I was thinking, yeah, we're going to bottom here, just hold this little range, and then it just kind of do what it wants to do. Maybe it reclaims closer to 5 or just kind of does whatever. But surprised to see we did get a push all the way down to 4.1. Very interesting to note on this 500,000 floater. They also had news today as well. Newscast today of another acquisition that did have this little like farting rocket right at the open of pre, or it wasn't open of pre, but 5:40-ish Eastern Standard Time. That just like, oh, news, right back down to that same price action. So maybe factoring that into the same thing of even a news catalyst couldn't have pumped this thing. Maybe that would have intrigued some bag holders long if they were trying to play any long based off of that basing yesterday. That, oh gosh, it's going to take a lot, and that's just not happening today in order for this thing to produce any higher price. It just wasn't happening, so forcing them to sell that way. Great idea, a grade for the trade idea, A+ that it would end up turning into. For what I thought the trade could potentially be in pre, expecting maybe a B idea, maybe we get an A, but certainly fell into an A+ opportunity profit-wise of getting short this thing. And for how I traded it, an A, I have to give myself for what the trade idea I was carrying into it on the day. And the chart that was there, man, it certainly was a lot more opportunity. So can't give myself a full A+ of just like absolutely perfectly nailing the chart. But taking profits as they were there, scaling in nicely at respectable short entry windows and covering into strength there, covering at signs of weakness and breaking to the downside. I can't ask for much more. Those are the charts I wanted to mention. I want to get into, I'm still holding ACET and TOMZ as of right now, from just like, again, they're super small, speculative, small cash account size. I think I have like 2 shares on ACET, and what's TOMZ at? Like 5 shares I think I have on TOMZ. So just, yeah, very small size. And even still too, these are solely educational, experimental. I don't really think TOMZ looks a lot better than ACET, of course, because I'm still in the green. And I don't think it's really dead yet, using this day maybe as a little rest for the breakout that's been happening on this daily, because it's not a lot of volume. It does need that big volume push in order for me to be confident in a sell, or for this thing to start retracing back down closer to 1.9. Definitely 1.8 is going to be a hard cutoff for me, because I think that volume just doesn't come there. If a base doesn't start to be put in around 2.1 area, and then that's breakout. It may really have been a bust down, Tatiana. ACET, the same type of thing. That it's not really dead. It tapped that little breakout point, but it just does need that volume. A few more technical levels to get through here on the daily, not necessarily volume-wise compared to what it did on this first huge green day there. Just keeping our eye on it. Experimental. Trying not to waste a lot of mental capital looking at these charts through that today because of the lackluster volume that is there and just gets so bogged down by the individual price action. But just looking at the perspective that is required for this swing trading move of keep the time frame perspective in mind of you're not trading intraday, you're trading multiple day time frames here, and not being tempted by TOMZ yesterday of, okay, we're 10%, that's a nice little trade that everyone knows. But for a swing trade, that's kind of like basic at the 10% profit that you'd be looking for versus, I'd be wanting to see 2.5 minimum out of this bad boy. I'm looking for a push above that range there in this breakout point. Maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't, but keeping our eyes on it and learning from it all the while. That is all I had on the day. 40 minutes again. Oh my gosh. Just crazy. I sincerely thank each and every one of you for watching. We will catch you guys on the next one.